for AAM EdCom for the Southeast region, and so it's SEMC EdCom. I'm also the gallery director at the Anomar Switzer Center for Visual Arts in Pensacola, Florida, and so I'm, greetings from sunny Florida. And yes, this is our third or fourth webinar that we've been doing since the shutdown began, and we're really hoping to keep up momentum, and as long as you all are interested in it. Just a couple of housekeeping things before we begin. In the chat area to the side, I would love for everybody to share their ideas or thoughts as we go along with this particular speaker, Alex, who I'll introduce in a second. And also, if you have great ideas or ideas for topics for the future that you really want to learn about or discuss with one another. I know that summer camps are something that a lot of people have been asking me about, so I am looking for speakers. If you have a fabulous summer camp idea, particularly those that might have a revenue stream attached to them, or that satisfy a grant that maybe you got in order to have summer camps for an underprivileged population, how you're dealing with that. These are topics that people keep requesting. So if you have a great program that you want to share some ideas for, if you could just put it in the chat area. We're going to save questions for the end. Alex is our only speaker today. So if you put your question in the chat area, I'm compiling them here and I'll ask them at the end. And then we're going to have lots of time, because we only have one speaker today, for discussion and see how that works out and sort of keep it going. There already are some really fabulous links for articles about different things that you can do without the internet or with little or no internet connection available to your audience. And so check those out. Plus, lastly, there's a Google form at the very top of the chat section, and I'm going to repost it over and over again, that you can go to that forum and submit your fabulous ideas. And I'm creating a shared document so everybody will be able to access the content from these webinars. And lastly, I think Zinnia might have mentioned it, and I was over here doing my email for a second at work. We do record these, and so we can send out the link afterwards. And so today we're going to talk about one particular program that a young man named Alexander Brooks at the Gaston County Museum of Art and History in North Carolina devised pretty quickly when the shutdown measures were instituted. And he's going to talk about it, and it's for individuals with no internet. And so I'm going to pass it off to Alex and get the talk started.
Thank you. Hi guys, my name is Alex Brooks, and I'm the education manager at the Gaston County Museum of Art and History. We're located in Dallas, in Gaston County, obviously, North Carolina, which is right outside of Charlotte. So we're an interesting mix demographic-wise. We have a large portion of our county that is very rural, but at the same time, we also have a large portion of our county that is basically just a bedroom community of Charlotte, so fairly urban population as well. And so that gives us an interesting little mix of demographics and also issues that we have to work out with. So to give you guys a little bit of an overview, whenever this got started, we went into, like a lot of people, a little bit of a period where everybody was trying to figure things out, and things kept changing. We are a county government-owned museum, and so we are, of course, beholden just as much as everybody else is in this particular scenario, to what our government has sort of issued on as far as lockdowns and everything. But we went through sort of a period of rapid change where nobody knew exactly what was happening. And rules were changing very swiftly. So we went from very quickly being on, okay, just close your doors, but you're still in the building. Just don't let the public in at the moment, but you guys can still come to work, to, well, now then you can come into work on a very staggered basis, to now everything is completely shut down. So we can't get into the building except for a couple of people once or twice a week. So obviously, you know, we immediately, when all this started happening, we immediately started trying to figure out how do we continue to engage our public, just like everybody else. And we were rapid firing ideas. And as soon as we would get some ideas in place, things would change. And so we would have to immediately scrap some ideas, continue with others, but scrap some ideas and come up with completely new ones. And so this is what we figured out, basically. My computer to work here. Give me just a second. Is that we are all struggling with the same thing. And this was in conversations with other institutions in our area, is that we're trying to reach some demographic that has no access to internet, be it school children, be it rural families, underserved populations, seniors, different groups. So what we found out when we initially shut down, we went and discussed, for us, it was, sorry, go back. So sorry. We tried to figure out, okay, who is it that we want to talk to? And like I said, things were changing so fast. We finally, in a meeting, our director put it the best way possible. He was like, all right, everybody just stop. Because everybody was flying through these ideas, and we were all just getting bombarded with ideas, but it was, none of them were fully fleshed. And it was almost like this panic driven, what are we doing? And so first he was like, just slow down, one thing at a time. Let's decide who is it exactly that we're trying to reach. We're not going to be able to reach everybody. We're not going to be able to do everything for everybody, because that's just going to end up being a hot mess. So slow down. Who is it that we're trying to reach? Where are they? What is it we want to do specifically for them? And what can we afford? Because part of our process, at least, was the fact that not only were we now excluded from our building, but our budgets were not frozen, but we were basically told by the county, don't spend any more money. So we basically slowed down, and what we decided was that we wanted to reach these guys. We wanted to reach school kids. And this happens to be my little guy. But specifically, we wanted to reach kids that don't have access to the internet. So when we reached out to the school system here in Gaston County and said, okay, how can we help you guys? What can we do? What are you doing on terms of the virtual learning? Can we jump in with you, do virtual classrooms, virtual programming with you? They said no. And at first we were sort of shocked, and it was like, no, we're not opposed to you doing it. You can't yet. A lot of our kids don't have internet. And what we found out was that the school system here in Gaston County was looking at about 2 to 3 weeks before they could get every student pretty much with access to the internet. Not only was that some rural families, but it was also a large number of families that just lived in an impoverished situation, did not have access to the internet. So what we were faced with in our county was basically about 2 to 3 weeks of them just getting on basically learning packets being distributed at the schools, and that the families would have to go in once a week and pick these up. So we decided, okay, well, 3 weeks with no engagement in terms of the school kids, that's just, we don't like that. We want to be more engaged with the kids, and we want to do so as immediately as possible. So what we did was we came up with the idea of, well, how can we reach the kids with no internet? Where are they? Where are they going to be going? Well, we're under lockdown, we're under quarantine, they shouldn't be going anywhere. But what we found out in conversations with our school system is that they are going somewhere. A lot of these same children that have no internet are also food poor as well, and are having to go to the summer feeding program. The school system here has started their summer feeding initiative. And so once a day, these kids and their families can go to specific locations. There's about 20 locations throughout the county, and they pick up a food packet, basically. It's got a breakfast and a lunch and a snack inside. And they go every day between a couple of hours, a set schedule every day for each of the feeding locations. And so what we figured was, okay, well, if we can put together a packet some sort of like lesson packet or engagement packet for the kids, we could distribute these at the food sites as well. So what we came up with was a curbside art packet. We didn't want to get into the history. So my museum does both art and history. We didn't want to go into the history quite yet, just because all the schools tended to be on a slightly different schedule in terms of what they were learning social studies wise. And we didn't want to preemptively introduce a subject that the teachers hadn't covered yet. So we decided to do art. And what we did was we put together basically a large brown grocery bag. And in it, we had these things right here that you can see. So everything that was in this packet was meant to be used. So it had 5 guided art plans that went with all of these materials. And it had things that they could reuse as well, such as the box of crayons, the pencil, the watercolor set, that sort of thing, so that they could create their own art after they were done with the art lessons. But everything, including the bag it actually came in, was meant to be used as materials. So it was all self-contained in one thing. It was all put together, everything, including the craft paper tubes, like I said, was supposed to be used. The way we funded this was basically we were all pretty convinced, and in conversations with our school systems, they were pretty convinced we would probably not be going back to school this year. We had hit a point in our school, in our museum year, that typically I'm not using much of the rest of my budget at this point, except for just to resupply a few materials, that sort of thing. But I don't have any huge programs coming up until next fiscal year. So basically I reallocated the entire rest of my school budget to this. This was, in terms of those finances, this was about a little less than $2,000. And this was for about 550 kids. Now we had different scenarios where we could get that down to about $1,000 and up to 1,000 children. It just required removing some of the different components. But that was it in a nutshell. From what I've heard, this is, I mentioned this in a couple other things. I've heard a couple of other people that are doing similar things that has been put out. I believe, Michelle, I believe you told me, I don't know if she's on here or not, Tracy Kenyon down in New Orleans at the Museum of Art has actually done this as well. So hopefully with good results. But this is it in a nutshell. I also know another curbside pack that has gone out with another group is with the Colorado Model Railroad Museum. Misty Tracy out there, if anyone wants to reach out to her, she's been putting one together, I believe that's STEAM-based. They've got paleontology, engineering, navigation, taking flight, that sort of thing as well. So if you're a little bit more of a science bent, there's possibilities with those also. But that's basically our curbside art pack.
Alex, could you talk about some of the challenges that you've had with this?
Yes. So the main challenge that we've had is, unfortunately, this has not gone out yet. So we got them together. We were all ready to rock and roll with it. And that's when the county basically put us on lockdown in terms of we are essentially no longer allowed in that building. So we can't go in, with the exception of basically our director goes in to make sure there's no water pipes leaking. So unfortunately, I have no idea how well this works.
Yeah, and could you also talk about the reaction from the teachers?
They loved this. They absolutely loved this. They were very excited, and we've actually had several that have been emailing the county wanting to see when, is it possible for us to get these out. They liked this because it gave their kids, it gave them something else to do. It also gave them another opportunity to build on things. I know there was we have several A+ class schools here in the county where art is sort of built into the curriculum with all subjects. And there were several people that were planning on using this as part of their, well, you know, have you guys made this particular art, such as like the clay. The lesson for that one was on face jugs. And there was some structural engineering that went into the face jugs, and they were planning on using that as part of their lessons in math. And so there's been a few that were really interested in seeing this go out. So hopefully we'll get it out fairly soon.
Somebody asked where you get your supplies from, and if you've been able to get discounts on them.
So we got no discounts per se, other than what a website was already offering. Though there were some decent sales going on. We got them primarily through Amazon, to be perfectly honest. Now we did have one grocery store that offered to donate the grocery bags, which was fabulous. We also used, I believe, discountschoolsupplies.com was the other website. I can go back and look and get you a list, Michelle, that you can share out to everybody. But it was really only predominantly Amazon and I believe Discount School Supplies.
And what kind of clay did you include?
So we used air block clay, air dry clay. And what we found worked the best, and this is what we do when we actually do this program, I guess in real life, shall we say, is what we would buy the 25-pound blocks, and roughly the size of your fist is what it takes to build a nice little pinch pot and face jug. So what we would do is we took basically just Ziploc bags and clawed out a chunk of clay and put it in there.
And so it's one of the things when I found out about Alex, I heard about your program literally a week after at least Florida got shut down. And so it was a very quick turnaround that I heard about this particular program. And I have seen others doing it with success where they weren't physically locked out of their building, which is your biggest challenge. I know
yes,
that.
It is.
When we started thinking about summer camps and how we can supplement it, because we sort of shift as museum educators, we still like to educate over the summer, but we sort of go more towards the fun stuff in the summertime in order to, you know, keep in line with the summer. You know, the kids are done with school and we're not only educating, but we're also doing a little layer of entertainment there. And this seems like just such a good idea to sort of take your ideas for summer camps and move them into a kit-based process almost. And I'm linking to the side. I've been seeing more and more of these kit ideas coming up with commercial entities. And there's a link there to the side from the Press Democrat about a at-home pottery kit. And it's and this one's a paid one, and it's a guild, but still it's the same sort of basis. They're getting the supplies, the materials, the lesson out to people. In this case, delivering it to their home, or you could deliver it through a feeding center. And then those people are taking it within their homes and doing the kits. And sometimes there's online instruction included where I've read articles where some people are scheduling an online tutorial meeting for X number of people, you know, and they do the art project or the experiment together. And then in some cases, there's a product that's sent back, you know, in this case with the pottery, they send it back to the potters, they pick it up, they fire it for you and redeliver it, or you get your next kit the following week and so on. And so these are ideas that we can sort of take from these commercial entities and then combine them with what Alex is doing to continue our mission through the summer. And somebody said over here to the side that Blick also does sponsorships. And it might be an opportunity to find a sponsorship for these. I know, Alex, in your case, the schools were super excited about getting this program started.
They were, yes.
Yeah, they were.
And we've seen galleries here doing the exact same thing you were talking about. Several of the galleries in our county as well have been doing little take-home art kits where they'll basically send them. All you have to do is call them. I don't believe they're charging, actually, which I find fascinating, at least for 2 or 3 of them that I know All you have to do is call or email them, and they'll mail you one, basically.
And if you consider these, also, if, you know, and I understand right now, revenue is tough. And so you were fortunate enough that you were able to offer these for free.
We were, yes. We used quite a bit of these things in our programs anyway. So a lot of the things, if we had, for example, the clay, we had about 50 pounds of clay already sitting in the museum that we knew. I mean, we ordered, I believe, one more block to make up what we needed, but beyond that, we had quite a bit. So.
And so I know I was online yesterday with the rest of my EdCom group, the regional reps, and one of the young ladies, she's in Nebraska, I believe, and her museum is developing, like I said, these kits for camp, and she's charging $18 a kit or a lesson. And so she's developing a menu that she's sending out to parents, and they can check off the ones that they want, and then they somehow get them. In this case, they're delivering them to the parents. And that's how they're handling their summer camps and some of their extracurricular programs. I can also say that this idea is a really good supplement also for art classes that generally are not being carried over into the virtual realm.
Yes.
And I know in my children's cases, the only classes that the school is actually carrying that they participate in right now are the four main ones, your English, math, science, and social studies. All the other extracurricular things have sort of fallen to the wayside, and they've said, just don't worry about those. And a lot of times that's where it's going to go.
Yeah, for our county, what they have typically been doing, I know for elementary, they've knocked it down even further, where they're actually doing very little as far as a variety of subjects. But I believe the principal broadcast each week, one Zoom session a week with each of their, what they call their specials. So with their art teacher, their music teacher, what have you. But it's not a mandatory thing. It's just considered something supplementary if you want to do. So how how engaged those are. I think they have a fairly decent turnout, but once again, it's one class a week. So they I don't know that if they're showing up with an entire school's worth of kids on that one Zoom, or how exactly they're actually doing that. I'm not entirely sure.
Alex, there's a question in the chat. If you could post an example of the project directions that are sent with your supplies. Like, do you have that?
The arts lessons.
I think so. Or just a link.
I should say I do not here with me, but I can get you one to send out.
And we can add that to that Google form at the end. And I've seen other people in other areas are seeing the kits, and just think about this idea. I keep referring to art because I actually work in an art gallery in an art department, and so art's on my brain. But these are a great idea also to go over to STEM or STEAM activities as well, because there's so many small experiments that you can connect back to an object and include a picture of an object with a short description and that activity within these types of kits, and then distribute them out. Are there any other questions about Alex's particular programs, or any other ideas that we can sort of glean from this? I did write something up there that I know in my community, there are more food centers than just the free lunches. We have food distribution centers, particularly for seniors and populations with special needs, all over the county that are being sponsored every day by different entities, whether it be civic groups to churches. And so we even have the fire department distributing things like masks and hand sanitizer. And so there are more than just the educators or the schools that you can go to help get your content into different audience levels. We talk a lot about engaging seniors, and a lot of times that's a population with little or no internet access, special needs populations. And so consider getting some of your content out with these other food food distributors, or again, like mass distributors. And somebody just said food banks, and it's true. Unfortunately, we do live in a time where we have to help one another out. And so it's just a good way to get your content out. Any other questions for Alex specifically? Zinnia shared this article, and I'm going to put it over in the group chat, and I read the article, and it's to the side, and it's about a small museum in it's a Dutch museum, and they are offering to talk to anybody who wants to chat with them about art on the telephone. And so this is a really good idea as well. And perhaps Zinnia can talk about this, because I know a lot of us, I'm not, but a lot of us are stuck at home. But, you know, we do have docents and volunteers who are trained, and their focus within your institution is to talk to everybody about art in your collection. And so this just seems like a wonderful idea. It not only gets your content out to audiences, it also engages your docents and volunteers while they're sitting at home looking for things to do as well. And so check that article out and see what you think.
Yeah, I'll follow up on that. I just saw that come across yesterday. Ironically, it was on Facebook or something. It's anti-internet, and then that's where we see it. But at the same time, it just kind of piqued my interest, I guess, sort of looking for what are the spaces that we can use less technology to try and engage. And so, you know, I forwarded this to our staff at the Gibbs, and Becca, I know you're on this call somewhere, but just as a way, again, to perhaps reach out to some of our frontline staff, or those who were used to interfacing with the public already and enjoy this. And I think that's sort of the key to this, because then I watched the conversation spin off into, well, why don't we get this expert and that expert and that expert? That's sort of not the point, or at least wasn't my point in reading the article. It was going back to the core group of your educators and your docents and your museum teachers that choose to do this and might be at home or looking for a way, you know, just to continue to do what they love. And then, of course, there was all the practical aspects of, well, you don't want someone calling from their own personal phone number or email, and at least from the museum side. But I don't know. I mean, I think looks to me like we might try it. So I'm just curious if anybody else out there is doing something that's more one-on-one connection like this through something as basic as a phone. Oh, that's a good idea. You can use Google Voice to hide your number.
There you go.
Answer, Athena. Yes, we will be getting them out.
Yeah.
Hopefully within the next week or so is what we're hoping.
Yeah, so Alex is answering a question that he's going to stick with these kits once he can get to them. They're going out somehow.
They will go out.
They'll go out. Going back to the article with the phone, and I'm sorry we don't have a speaker. I would love to track down this Dutch guy and get him on here to talk, but about the program. Somebody else a few weeks ago also, we were trying to decide how do we reach seniors in senior homes, because they're being hit really hard right now, and they are totally isolated people in care homes where they're not allowing visitors in, and they're definitely not allowing residents out. And also there's a higher rate of infection in these places than other places. And so another idea that came up was doing recordings of messages and brief little lessons or talks, and then physically either dropping them off at the home or sending them to the home digitally, and then asking the staff to share them with residents. And it goes in line with a lot of nursing homes are requesting people to interact with their residents somehow, whether it's sending cards, videos, just messages, because the residents are so lonely. And so think about how your museum can also, come up with ways to reach out to these populations, because they're the ones that are really desperate right now for some sort of interaction. And these are populations that we generally try to reach anyway. But we just need to come up with new methods to do so that don't necessarily require somebody to log on and find our content. or a click on an invitation. And so it's really at this point, how do we facilitate these connections, and in these great creative ways we can come up with doing so. And again, it's a wonderful way to get your docents and volunteers involved, because, you know, engaging your docents and volunteers right now is just as important, because not only for retention, but you also want to keep them motivated and mentally fit, so they don't fall into isolation as well. And so these are all different ideas that we can work on. Anybody else have any more questions or comments or ideas they'd like to share? Have you had any pushback on the cleanliness of the kits and the material? Or do you suspect any pushback on that? That's a good question.
We have not. Now, whenever we did this, you know, we had planned on these posts going out whenever we actually went out to distribute the kits. We did obviously use gloves and masks and everything whenever we were putting them together. And we did wipe everything down. We took some pictures that sort of showed that, not so much because of that, but just the whole, you know, social media post of, hey, you know, these kits are coming. And of course that didn't get posted because the kits didn't come. No, so we have not. Honestly, don't suspect any. You know, I'm not anticipating any. But you know, if we do, all we can do is, you know, make the that we've tried to follow as much of the CDC protocols as we can.
I would suspect that it's just as dangerous as purchasing groceries.
Yeah.
And bringing them into your home, or collecting the food kits in general, because the food handler that made them. Somebody had a really nice idea over here, asking the nursing staff to record clips of seniors reading children's books, and then you could share that with your visitors. So it's like backwards way of interaction. And that's a really good idea too.
Yeah.
Or even having your docents read books and then sharing those clips on your social media pages with your visitors. And I have to tell you, with Zoom these days, I'm very new to Zoom. Thank you, quarantine, for introducing me to Zoom. But what I've learned is that you could have a Zoom meeting with a docent or a volunteer or a senior, put anything you want in the background as long as you get a digital image of it. So you could virtually put them in your museum or in front of a piece, you know, as long as copyright. You know, and then have them read it and then save this as an MPEG file and be able to share it. And so those are also ways too. Yeah, somebody is mentioning about the copyright guidelines. There are some, I did the presentation. There are some children's book, the bigger ones right now, and double check into this because I don't know all their names offhand, but there are a lot of publishers right now that are waiving copyright for children's books just for schools and nonprofit institutions, because we had a long discussion about this yesterday with my EdCom group. And so, because their museums were, I'm not a traditional museum here, so I don't have the visitorship that y'all do, but their museums were facing this and delved into it a little bit deeper. And so there are some publishers right now that are waiving the copyright. And so check into that before you get started on it, but it's just something to think about.
We're doing a collaboration with our one of our branch libraries, actually, where the librarian reads she's continuing basically her story time program that she did regularly each week. And what she's doing is she reads, we'll do a split screen basically where she reads the story and I illustrate at the same time. So you get to watch me draw while she's reading the book. But yeah, they've had to basically go through and check with each publisher as to which story that she can do, so that we can keep those up on our social media and on our webpage for a while.
And that's actually a good idea. The libraries might be a great resource to call them first and find out, because I'm sure there's a lot of libraries that are keeping up with this. Oh, and somebody said it's Library Week this week. There you go. There was one other idea, Alex, that you had shared with me on the phone the other day, and I can't recall what it was, but it was a good one that I'm sorry if I'm putting you on the spot.
We talked about
As I'm writing down. Yeah, I know.
You know, what I was just, and this is just random, I'm sorry, and please feel free to just like jump in and say something if you want.
Yeah.
It's pretty informal. But I was thinking about the telephone thing, and you know, there's the idea of having your staff engage. But remember, well, I remember when I was little, and remember you could call and like get a recording of Santa Claus or somebody. I don't know if anybody remembers that, but like I guess another way for a museum to use their phone system is if that you had the hotline, and each day someone called in and they could get a new fact that they didn't know about the museum, or hear a different staff member reporting, you know, what they're working on, and it would give someone a reason with a phone, I don't know, to still be able to engage. Or I don't know, I mean, part of my problem is I throw these ideas out and don't think about the actual like logistics of doing it, but it's just another, I'm just thinking of like the most basic technology for people who aren't on, you know, Facebook or Instagram or even reading blogs or whatever. So
yeah. Zinnia, it's interesting, and I'm sorry we're having this conversation, but you just sparked a memory. When I was a little girl, our library had a number you could dial.
Yes, I know.
Story, and it changed every week. And so, or at Christmas time, you could call in this number and hear a message from Santa. You know,
that's what I remember. But
I remember that, and so that's a really good idea. I actually like that.
Because I mean, it's just one more thing, and it's like, oh, it's 2:00. The Gibbs has changed their message, and you know, maybe today I'm going to learn about the architecture. So, I don't know. I mean, again, it's additional work for staff, but like the work we're doing anyway, you might as well use the phone.
And I know that one of my museums also, we used to have the extra postcards from the store because we had thousands of postcards. Our main founder was a publisher, so we had postcards everywhere. And we used to write postcards to people, and it would have a collection piece on the front and be able to do a little message on the back. So that's, again, another way to reach out. Mailing them, you can mail them in bulk to different people, or adding them to these kits, or distributing them at food centers, using any of these kind of items that we have around. And so you might not necessarily need to go and purchase anything. You could look at the resources you have at your own museum. Any other ideas or things you'd like to share? So it's about spam callers we'd want to listen to them. Yes, I think that would be a good spam call.
Exactly. I know there's some strategy behind this here. I mean,
yeah.
You know.
No, I like that idea. It's sort of retro. That would be fascinating for me to hear that.
That's Generation X right there. We're having to like.
Yeah. Or even if you had well, it's like when you push a button to hear the artist talk about their work, you know, or push a button to hear this scientist explain this, or push, you know, it's the same idea, but now we're just calling it in instead. It's the age of quarantine. Any other ideas or things you'd like to share?
Is anyone else doing anything non-technology based that could be inspirational to a group of 40 of us here? Or were you all looking for the answers in this Zoom? Pretty much.
Sorry.
I know. Yeah, it's hard.
That's all I got.
No, Alex, this is great.
And I don't blame Alex. We had a very hard time finding people who were not doing something connected with the internet. And all of the programs that I did identify had to do with food distribution centers. And so I thought this would be a great way for us to spark ideas and sort of come up with a group think to, you know, think about how we can take this basic premise and then expand upon it. Somebody said audiobooks through Hoopla on phones are free via your local library. Oh. Yeah. I'm sorry, I'm typing.
Yeah, unfortunately, everything else I've got going is dependent on the internet.
So, Alex, do you just have everything sitting there ready to go at the museum, pretty much?
Pretty much. I mean, we have a few more to put together, but yeah, pretty much.
somebody said here their grounds are still open for people to walk through. That's an interesting idea. If you do happen to be fortunate enough to have grounds or gardens that are attached to your institution, you know, you can always put out paper copies of something there for people to interact with. And so that's a good idea too. I'm going to list in the chat. These are the topics I'm still looking for speakers on. If you'd like to share, I have a couple lined up. And I'll get to that in a second. We still need speakers for our summer camp ideas, virtual games and activities. So not necessarily lessons, but we're looking for the fun stuff. Because what we've been finding is that a lot of parents are now requesting just something fun. They're getting plenty of educational content from the school that their kids needs to do. They're just looking for entertainment for their kids. So these games and activities like scavenger hunts and so on. Meaningful social engagement, how are you using Facebook and Instagram and so on. We've all heard about, what is it, Tim the Cowboy?
Tim the Cowboy.
Yeah, I've heard lots about Tim the Cowboy. I haven't experienced Tim yet.
Michelle, you need to. He's a national treasure.
Yes. Virtual programs for seniors. We touched on some of those today. Reopening plans, policy changes, or ideas for reopening our museums and our education departments. Because, you know, now's the time to start thinking. California is lifting up a lot of restrictions. Georgia's lifting up a lot of restrictions. I think Florida will in a few weeks. And so what are our plans to reopen? How are we going to do things differently, if at all? And then in that same line, cleaning and safety protocols. You know, how are we going to change the way that we treat our surfaces and help, you know, cull the spread of germs? And then lastly, teacher continuing ed. And so if you would like to speak on any of those topics, that would be wonderful. The topic for next week, the same time, are virtual field trips. And we have 2 speakers lined up for that. And they're going to share, one is a program that was set up before quarantine, and another is a program that was set up after quarantine. So you can sort of see the difference. And they're going to talk about that next week. And just to the side, Athena shared that she created a printed activity and coloring pages and distributed them with a nonprofit that was still giving out food and so on. So any other questions for Alex or me or Zinnia? I really do appreciate everybody coming today and taking your time. I know there's a plethora of Zoom meetings out there right now and webinars. We are going to take the list from today and we're compiling it. And so you'll get notices for our next one. But again, join us next week. And I thank Alex for sharing your ideas. And I thank everybody over in the chat for sharing their ideas too.
Thank you for having me, guys.
Yeah.
We'll see y'all next week. Thank you for coming. Oh, when I have to say this. So the SCMC happy hour this Friday,
oh, yes.
I remind everybody each week, but this one is special because it's Susan Perry's last SCMC happy hour virtually as executive director. So if you have a few minutes, we're going to start it at 5 o'clock Eastern. Just drop in and, you know, have your drink. The link will be on Facebook and we'll put it on the website as well, Susan, if we can get to that. And then, you know, it goes out on e-news. So feel free to share the e-news that come out. I know, hope so many of you are members. It's okay if you're not, with friends that you know who maybe are not a part of SCMC yet but could benefit from these meetings. I mean, we're really just trying to continue to come together as a community and talk and share. I mean, there's plenty of places to go to get the higher level webinars of, you know, learning and what's rolling out, but just continue to use these forums as a place to share ideas and, you know, see each other and just keep meeting. So we'll do them as long as there's interest.
The recording will be on Facebook, right? Because I just told everybody that. So
oh yeah, but one thing we do, no, yes, it'll be on Facebook, but we also finally got them on our YouTube channel. SCMC has SCMC has a YouTube channel, and so if you just search Southeastern Museums Conference, the previous 2 weeks are up there now from the 8th and the 14th. And so you can access that way and share with friends and people who miss this. But yeah, tomorrow, this just in case you're interested too, if you wear many hats, on Thursday, the collections professionals, Southeastern Registrars Association is having a Zoom meetup at 1 o'clock Eastern. And then on Friday, I think I might have gotten that time wrong, but on Friday, the development professionals are also meeting. So check those links in the e-news and join if you want to. We'd be happy to see you. I'll be there. All of them. This is a great way to find out. You know, we haven't sent out any formal surveys yet in terms of SCMC, although Susan, cut off mute for a minute. Are we going to put that out today?
That survey from, I didn't see, anyway, yes, we're working on it. Yes, we're working on it. A national survey. It's talking about the impacts of COVID-19.
Yeah, and when you see that come out, just take a few minutes to, the data that's gathered there is going to be really helpful in terms of getting a picture of where we are, where we're going.
Yeah. So thank you all.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye. Let's see. Thank you, Alex.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, guys.